established herself as a leader within Tennessee state government, serving with the executive branch. She focused on increasing customer service, streamlining process efficiencies, and reducing taxpayer costs. She served her last year in the office of the governor as Governor Haslam's Director of Communications. Reen greatly values the benefits provided by government entities and understands the importance of communicating large initiatives. During her time in Tennessee state government, Reen served as a Deputy Director of Customer-Focused Government, which is where I got to meet her at, providing consultation services to the Department of the Executive Branch. Reen developed the state of Tennessee's Alternative Workplace Solutions Initiative, which we called AWS, where she became the state's first director of AWS, leading the strategic implementation throughout multiple state agencies. And that process included many of the outcomes that Reen will talk about today, but just to name a few: better customer service to its citizens, boosted employee mobility and flexibility and productivity, improved recruitment and retention of employees, improved and modernized workspace use, reduced total occupancy and real estate costs, saving the taxpayers of Tennessee many dollars. Reen first served the citizens as the Deputy Commissioner and Chief Operating Officer of the Department of General Services. As a member of the executive leadership team, excuse me, she established direction, developed strategies, and created a short-term and long-term goal, which resulted in transformative change for the department. She also led collaborative, enterprise-wide initiatives that incorporated business best practices into government, including master planning, facility assessment, and facility management improvements, transforming Tennessee for tomorrow, which we called Project T3, and also did the statewide shared video conferencing. Prior to her service at the state of Tennessee, Reen was an associate attorney with Ferris Matthews Babango in Nashville. And also for those who come from Nashville or who are joining from there, Reen was honored in 2011 as one of Nashville's top 30 under 30, and in 2017 was Nashville's top 40 under 40 award recipient. And she also is the mother of 3 beautiful baby children. So thank you, Reen, so much. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Amy. That was such a lengthy introduction. And I guess what I would say is that the moral of the story is I've been doing this a really long time, and in March, the rest of the world just kind of joined me. And so before we get started, I want to say thank you to Caitlin and your leadership with Highlands Economics Partnership, because the topic of leading a remote workforce is so timely right now. And to have a professional development session on it for YP Highlands is just really great. And I'm happy to be included. So thank you. I also want to say that, you know, I put at the end of this slide that I'm a wife and working mom of 3 because, guys, I'm living it and it is real. And the struggle's real sometimes. So if my children come in, please just forgive me, and we'll keep going, because today is one of the days that I don't have coverage. So I've got them out of the room for a moment. But okay, so let's get started and move on to slide 3. And I have this in here. Amy touched base on it for a moment. But as she mentioned, I served as the state of Tennessee's first director of alternative workplace solutions. We called it AWS, and it was through creating and implementing that program that I first learned not only the benefits associated with working from home, but that the supervisors, managers, and team leads are so critical, guys, in making sure that teams working remotely are effective, which is why this session is so important. You'll see that I've included on this slide that this initiative began as a real estate initiative, and it really did. If you're familiar with the State Department of Children's Services, we had caseworkers that were spending each day working out in the communities all across the state of Tennessee, in your areas and beyond, but leaving about 2,000 desks empty every single day. And as you know, real estate is costly, and so as we migrated these employees to be mobile, what we found is that we had a huge success in giving them flexibility and allowing them to work differently. It was a great benefit. And so I'm not going to go over it, but I've included in these 3 blue boxes some of the results that we found. And so let's go on to slide 4. And for now, I'm going to talk just a moment about what we've done since. Fast forward a few years, and my business partner, Terry Cowles, and I co-founded Baskin Strategies with a focus on transforming companies to allow employees to work more flexibly, and then kind of filling in the backside and outfitting their real estate accordingly. So that's what we do. That's what I do on a daily basis. On this slide, you'll see a very high-level picture of the services that Baskin Strategies provides. But today, what I'm going to do is kind of focus on the specific work from home arrangement and how we as leaders and participants in this ourselves can best manage our employees and ourselves really currently working outside of the office. We have had the experience and the benefit of working with another state. Since that time, I'll tell you, it's a Tennessee bordering state. We've also worked with a university system and with several private companies. So I've kind of seen a big range of from really, really large scale states trying to implement all the way to really small companies. So if you're thinking, you know, we've got 3 or 4 people, that's okay. Because what I'm giving you today is what I consider the 4 most critical steps to leading a remote workforce for any size organization or company. And then I'm going to follow it with just some tips and traits that I've kind of learned along the way. And then Amy is going to moderate some questions and answers at the end. So if you have those questions, you can use the Zoom group chat to message those either to everyone or to Amy New specifically, and she'll be able to pick those out for the end. Okay, let's get started. Step 1. Hold on just a sec. Okay, step 1, know who should be working remotely and who should not. Okay, think about it this way. Some job functions are collaborative in nature and some job functions are transactional. What you'll find with the more transactional jobs is that they are better suited for working from home and working remotely. And I'm going to give you some examples of why. Not long ago, my team and I were analyzing a company's positions, and there was a front desk receptionist, and she was so kind, and she kept telling me about how she drove in an hour each morning to work, and she really, really wanted to work from home. But if you think about the job that she actually did, her job was to greet customers, direct people to the right meeting space, to help set up for events. So her job truly was collaborative in nature and ideally needed to be performed within the office. Now, to the contrary, we recently interviewed a gentleman that was an IT specialist and he worked on coding. And when I would ask about his job, he'd kind of give me the example that when you're coding, it's like spinning a bunch of plates on these tall sticks. And when someone interrupts you, a plate falls and it breaks. So even with that example, he basically was telling me his job is heads down focus. He was trying to convince me that he needed to be in the office every single day. And so I say both of those examples to say, just remember that it's not personal, it's about the job functions. And some employees are performing responsibilities that can better be accomplished at home, and some are not. I put this last point on here, know their current working environment, just to say the pandemic has changed the rules on us, guys. So some companies are in the middle of re-entry, and so you can make that choice of who's going to work from home and who's not. And then some companies have, I know, still 100% employees working from home. So for those collaborative positions, you as the leaders, as the team leads, may need to be providing those employees with different responsibilities so that they can work efficiently as well. And for those that are transactional and more heads down focused, they may have some situations going on in their working environment that you can help them address. So what this means is, doesn't mean you're not going to get a great work product. It just means that you may need to adjust a little bit, but know who should be working remotely and who should not. Next slide. Okay, ensure that your organization has the infrastructure in place. This is critical to me because I just think it's very important that you give your team the parameters in which they need to work within from a policy, procedure, and guidelines perspective. I think it's just fair to give them those parameters, as well as the equipment that they need to be successful. Laptops, don't give someone a big, huge desktop and ask them to work from home. Give them what their Wi-Fi standards are. If they need a printer, any particular apps, I gave you just a moment ago the example of the DCS caseworkers. And another example is when we transitioned that group out, we found that some counties in Tennessee still required scanned documents to go to the court system. So then we had to look into this whole portable mobile fax machine, and it became really necessary. So make sure you have that infrastructure in place and that your employees are equipped accordingly. Security, as it should be, is the #1 priority for most companies. So utilize your IT professionals to help you navigate security measures for your team. I know a lot of us use VPN logon, and there are other secure methods, but have that security in place. And you know, some companies have let me know they had it in place before they went home, and others have not. So it's never too late to start looking at that infrastructure. Okay, step 3 is, you know, it's very important. A leader once said to me, okay, Reen, so how am I going to know all these people are working when they're at home? And I said, well, how do you know that they're working now? Management by sight is just not terribly effective. And seeing someone sitting behind a computer, looking like they're scrolling, and all kinds of things does not necessarily mean that they're producing a great work product. Meaningful performance metrics and measurements need to be put in place to identify clear goals and outcomes, and it's beneficial to you and for your business or company. And you know, to the same point, all employees should be held accountable for what's expected of them. So here are 2 thoughts to this point that I'll tell you. If your company right now has existing performance metrics, I want to encourage you to go back and revisit them to ensure they fit these new expectations of working in a remote environment, because sometimes they are a little different, and they may need to be altered or changed to ensure that you're still kind of measuring the outcomes that you want to be measuring. 2, if your company does not have formal performance metrics in place, then I would just make sure that you, as team leads, as leaders, or parts of a team, making sure that you're personally setting those goals and targets for yourself and for your team to aid in accountability. Next slide. Step 4, this is my final one. Train your employees. Having them read through a policy or procedures is really just not enough. And I'm an attorney, so I can make fun. I'm going to say that sometimes it's hard to read the language that might be in a policy. And my experience has been that people just learn better when they are given scenarios and can ask questions and get some feedback to their thoughts and questions. So make sure that you accurately kind of train them on the policy and procedures. A lot of companies will do an attestation clause that you've read them, and I think that's great too. My second point here is create training materials and examples on how to maintain confidentiality, tips for working at home. There's tons and tons of information out there on this. We've been teaching this for a long time, but since March, I have just seen a boom in articles written about how people can work from home effectively. Things like get up every morning and set a routine and dress yourself as if you were going into the office. Go out and grab a coffee to get out. Focus on your physical well-being. Go take a walk in the middle of the day. But those are the kind of things that I think employees need to know. Many of us were just thrust into this work from home environment back in March, and maybe we had to figure out some of those on our own. But now is the time to kind of go back and train employees on working a little more effectively from home. Teach employees how to use provided technology. Remember that technology itself can be stressful to some people. And so you can take the stress out of something just by showing them a demo or walking them through how to work that mobile scanner that you've provided them. Number 4, give them protocol for when something doesn't go as expected. The number 1 thing I hear is that the Wi-Fi connection has gone out. I'm sure all of you are experiencing strong or not strong connectivity, and you know where to move around your house to get it better and things like that. But also roommates, family members are at home these days. And so there are things that are unexpected that can happen. Make sure they know what to do when it does. And then continue training. Keep your teams up to date on any new processes and procedures that that come along and that they're going to be introduced to. What you really want is for them to have a continued understanding and adoption. So those are my 4 must-have steps. And next, I'm going to go through some good pointers for those of you that are leading a remote workforce. Remember to send any questions you have to Amy New. And these are just some good things that honestly I have learned along the way. And we are going to send out this PowerPoint. So you can write, but you also have the PowerPoint. Okay, set expectations from the very, very beginning. Remember that flexibility provides a great benefit to employees, but it is by no means a free-for-all. And it's very important to communicate effectively what it is that you expect. So set those working hours if they're necessary. That depends on the type of service that you provide. Define availability, when you're going to be available, when you're not, and response times for those expectations. I want to give you an example of a service that we do for companies, because I think it would be beneficial for you guys to do it. Is we do what we call an employee acknowledgement form. And the employee acknowledgement form is really an agreement between the supervisor and the employee. And it says, hey, I'm going to be working from this time on these days, and this is my routine schedule. Now, of course, things are going to come up, doctor's appointments, having to have something looked at your house, things like that. And those are one-offs that the employee and the supervisor can discuss and address and agree to. But as an all-in-all, this is what the routine is going to look like. Maybe you're someone that's going to start working at 7 instead of 8. Maybe you're going to work earlier than that, or work a little later in the afternoon because you're taking a class. I have just found that employee acknowledgement form to be very helpful over time. Okay, this is such a thing. Do not micromanage your employees. I transitioned a group a couple years ago, and they were just such the right positions to be working flexibly, and we had a routine. They were going to be working from home a few days a week and in the office to collaborate a couple days a week. And when I surveyed the team to find out how it was going, they absolutely hated it. And I was very shocked and had to dig into it and figure out why. And it was because the manager was making them fill out an Excel spreadsheet in 15-minute increments to kind of justify what it was that they were doing. I tell that story to say that team shifted from being extremely productive in the great work that they provided to spending more time filling out that Excel spreadsheet to sort of justify what they were doing than they even were working. So just remember that it's not possible to manage every aspect of work done by a remote team. Maybe if you had one employee, it might be possible, but it's just really not. So once you make clear what you expect from your employees, get out of their way and let them do it. Remember that you have great people around you. You've hired great people. You've got great people on your team. So instead of focusing on the activity or the hours worked, focus on the outcomes that are defined by the measurements that you guys have already put in place. So no micromanaging on my watch. And embrace a virtual environment. This point, it's like kind of we've all had to do that in the past couple of months. So it's not as strong as it used to be, but I want you to create a culture that embraces the use of technology. I mean, it helps your employees feel culturally connected and like they're a part of the team. My team personally, prior to the pandemic, we did a call every Monday morning, and that's when we were seeing each other throughout the week on different project sites, and we were teaming together. And now we do a Zoom every Monday morning because the video just really helps. It helps to see their faces and to connect. So, and I've also, another point I'll make here is that I'm reading a lot right now about how people from how people working at home are feeling. And people can get lonely and feel a little out of the loop. So I think embracing these technologies are going to help. Remain cognizant of the workload. This is for especially when you have people in the office and people outside of the office. Employees in the office should not be taking on more work than employees outside of the office. And employees outside the office are not on vacation. I was in a client space not too long ago when I heard someone say, hey, John's out of the office today. Can I just send you to Mark? And I had to gently stop them and say, no, John is working from home, and that's very different than being out of the office. So what that individual should have said is texted John or messaged John or communicated with John and said, hey, so-and-so's on the phone. Are you available? Can I send them your way? So really embracing that virtual technology, making it a part of your culture and not something that's a strange, distant thing if you're not in the office. Okay, maintain your in-office practices. I constantly encourage people to make your organization's mission, vision, and core values just as important when you're not physically together. So keep those same practices that you would if you're in the office. Recognize employees' birthdays and, you know, when your anniversary is there and personal milestones. I think this particular slide is just so important. If you work a job typically where you would touch base in the morning and touch base in the afternoon, then just do it. Now, my team doesn't do that because we work on different projects and kind of work more to the outcome. So I'll touch base with them every other day. But do as you normally would in the office. If you would normally pour your coffee in the break room and say, hey, how are the kiddos this weekend? Then I encourage you to continue to pick up the phone and to call and have those same conversations. Meet for coffee and lunch if you're in a city or a place where that you can do that. If you would normally grab lunch together, then try to do that if you can. I know that some team, you know, part of the benefit of working totally remotely is that you can have people that don't live near you. You can get great people that work out of state in different places. But if you are all local, or you could meet for coffee or lunch. And then another thing that I always say is provide your professional thoughts and feedback in the same way you would if after a presentation, I would pop my head into someone's office and say, hey, Jordan, you did a really great job today. Make sure you still do that and still give them that feedback. Part of creating a virtual environment is really personally connecting even when you're not in person. So definitely keep that front of mind. Communicate often. I cannot stress this one enough, and I know I was a communications director, so maybe it's just a little ingrained in me, but never underestimate the power of communication. Never leave anyone hanging or guessing what you might think about something. There are a variety of tools that can help you with this. I didn't put a lot of these tools on the slide because I don't personally recommend Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Google Meets one over the other, but I encourage you to use the chat features and the messaging tools with information that can be chatted and messaged about, and then using those tools if necessary. Also, ask your team what's working and what's not. If you're using some sort of productivity tracker and it is truly burdensome, then maybe try to steer away from that and choose something else that works better for your team. So continue to communicate, continue to stay dialed in to what they're doing and what works for them. And I'm going to ask now, Caitlin, before I go to the next slide, I want you to show the video clip. It's one of my favorites, and you guys just got to see it. You might have already seen it.
Give me just one moment to pull it up. Transitioning between. Oh. Can you see this now? Okay, perfect.
Question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me. My apologies.
region?
My apologies. North Korea, South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited in the last 6 months to a year.
And what will it mean for the?
I have to find my PowerPoint again. My apologies.
And Caitlin, you're doing great. It is tricky to toggle back and forth between video and PowerPoint, so I commend you. You're doing an excellent job. So, as you saw,
behind the video, Charlie, I can't get enough. Good morning.
Sorry.
Neither can we. Good morning. Live TV can be tough enough, even when there's.
Okay, you can go back to slide 14.
Well, now I'm having technological difficulties. I'm so sorry.
Well, while you're pulling that up, I'll talk to the video that you just saw. That's definitely one of my favorites. You can Google British Public Broadcast Service and kids come in the background and it'll come up. It's certainly entertaining. I show that video just to say that recognize that the new normal is very different. When I used to give this presentation, 4 months ago, it was very different in that, we had in the policy that you could not have dependents whenever you were providing a work product for many companies. And so recognize that the new normal has some differing factors. And I'm back on slide 14, Caitlin, right before that one. But what I would say to note is that roommates, spouses, partners, children, they're all at home right now. And it just is the reality that we're living in through the pandemic. And unfortunately, not a lot of the coffee shops are open and letting you go sit in and get away from it all. So I just ask that you guys all understand that, especially in the current environment. Your team has a lot going on. Adjust where you need to and try to recognize when someone on your team is struggling. Some people are emotionally, mentally, and physically exhausted right now. I know I've borderlined that around the homeschooling time and in working a full-time job and running a company. And so I know others out there are feeling that way. My team personally, we've had to adjust with, there's one day a week that I have my children here at the house because I don't have coverage and we've made it work. And so just recognize that the new normal is very different, and working with others at home is kind of the world that many of us are, not all, but many of us are living in. So next slide. I said this before the pandemic a lot, and I'm going to say it now that it's important more than ever. Create an opportunity for in-person touch base for a lot of the reasons that I just mentioned. It was rare prior to the pandemic that we ever analyzed a job and found that it should work remotely 100% of the time. So remember that working 100% of the time may not be the right answer. So as we start kind of migrating back into the office space with those different restrictions and things in place, consider scheduling those one-on-one in-person meetings, collaborative brainstorming sessions. There are just sometimes that whiteboarding a topic is really, really beneficial. I've always believed that supervisor-employee touch bases should happen in person. And same thing with performance reviews. I think that's really critical. And, the one thing to remember through all of this is that people are missing their colleagues, and that face-to-face interaction and spontaneous conversation are connections that can't be replaced via technology. So help your employees with that engagement and schedule where it's appropriate some in-person interaction. Okay, keep the customer front of mind. For many companies and for many of us working, the customer is why we're here, and don't ever forget that. When a client will ask me what the best virtual technology for them to put in place, I will literally go through an analysis of what the customer uses and what works best for the customer, because I think that is really the most important thing. And remember, when you're working from home, you may need to visit a customer face to face. Many of us are I've been working from home a long time. I know this is new for some of you, but I'm going to meet with someone this afternoon with my mask on and everything ready, because sometimes you need to visit a customer face to face. So stay dressed appropriately and ready to do that, ready to jump right in when you need to. Keep that customer front of mind. And then my last thought before we go to questions is practice what you preach. It doesn't need a lot of explanation. I think that you should follow your own organization's policy, procedures, and guidelines as you're leading a remote workforce. Be available and responsive when your employees need you. Don't expect something of them that you're not willing to do yourself, and stay positive through all of this, because working remotely has a whole lot of benefits, and there are a lot of studies out there that show just how productive people can be. Just how productive people are when they are working from home. And so stay positive and continue to encourage your workforce as they're working that way. And that is all of my tips that I have. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy to kind of moderate any questions that you may have from the group.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Reen. That was wonderful. So, and a reminder, if you do want to send a question, you can just put it in the chat box to everyone or just to me. But I'm going to read through. I've got 4 questions so far. One says, oh, and as they're coming in, it's going away. Okay. I understand the issue with micromanagement, but how do you assess an associate that you believe is not producing working effectively? How do you bring that to light and address that with the associate?
Well, first of all, I like that whoever this is even is aware and knows that that an employee may not be producing up to everything that they could be producing, because that's even a hard part in itself. I like to have measurements on the front end, and it depends on the type of job that's being worked on. If it's something where, they're an auditor and they're producing reports, then you know that you can expect 2 reports a week. Or for consultants, they're working on different steps to lead up to a final report. But what I would say is don't forget that you can use an employee improvement plan. And if by your evaluation an employee should be working more than they're doing, then I would do a true employee improvement plan, put them on it, and stay with them kind of as they work forward to improve. I also want to put out there are productivity measurement tools in place. I am not sold on all of them, but I do think that some of them can be helpful. If anyone's ever been to Monday.com, that's something to look at. Timular, Prodoscope is one that's kind of come into mind, but those are tools that kind of help you kind of level set across the board and be able to address when an employee isn't working up to where you think they should be. That was a very long answer. I'm sorry.
No, that was good. And actually, we could also share some of the SMART goals that we're actually implementing here at the Chamber in the Highlands too, if the team's up for that. But here's another one. Can you give some details on what an employee improvement plan is or what it looks like?
Yes, I actually have a format for that, and honestly, it's in a file behind me right here. So for purposes of this, I would say if you'd like to reach out to me afterwards, I'll send you a format. But Amy, you may have one too. We always have a format for an employee improvement plan, just like we have one for goals and measurements and metrics and working forward. So happy to help share.
Okay, awesome. Okay, here's another. What is the most overlooked step by leaders when people are working from home?
Let's see. I would say we're talking about it. I would say performance metrics. I think that a lot of people were just forced to kind of go home very quickly, and I'm not sure that very many companies are where they would have liked to have been on tracking measurements and metrics and performance that way. And so think about it this way, leadership is much more comfortable whenever they read the measurements and the metrics of how their employees are performing. They are much more comfortable than you saying to them, hey, I talked to Reen today. She said she was doing a great job. So that's probably the most overlooked step, is putting those performance metrics in place.
Okay, here's another that I'm going to read, and then I'm going to also say that I did this earlier in the meeting. Now I feel terrible after reading this. But it says, I have an issue with people being in a meeting virtual, but refusing to be seen. I feel it is indeed a replicated on-site meeting. It should have the same perimeters. So show up and be engaged. Do you have opinions on that or any comments?
Yes, I have my own opinions. I think that there are circumstances. I have been between meetings a couple of times during the pandemic where I've been driving around assessing helping people move their real estate and kind of assess what they're doing to get back into the office. And I have dialed into a couple of Zooms and could not show my face while I was driving, but I wanted to listen. I think there are circumstances. I agree with whoever wrote this question. If we're having a collaborative session, show up and care enough about us to get up and get dressed and put your video on and interact with the speaker and the team engaged. I say that to say, there are always circumstances where you just can't, and that's okay too.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so here's the next one. When you are migrating a team to work from home, what is the number one question or concern that you get asked?
I would say this is probably a pre-pandemic answer, but the number one thing that I would get asked by leaders is, so if the employee is not performing, should I bring them back into the office? And we may have that opportunity again soon as people migrate back in, but my answer to that is no. To the person that asked about the employee improvement plan, that's how I would remedy that situation. I have experienced where someone did not want to work from home, and their job was kind of migrated to work from home. And so they intentionally did some things to get pulled back into the office. And I really don't think that's the right answer. I think it's more of creating a flexible mix of in the office and out of the office, and then holding them accountable for what their job function is.
Okay, you may have answered this one, but it says, are there some technology tools out there that are better than others?
Yes, I did answer that one probably after, but I would say that I definitely have my preferences, but that I kind of gear toward what's best for the customer. I have some customers, guys, that truly just prefer email and prefer calls. And so I gear towards what the customer wants. And then there are some productivity trackers out there. There's also some really good trackers. They're different products for different services. Like there are tracking tools for if you're a call center. That's a very important one that you should be tracking, the calls that come in, the amount of time spent on a call. And so there are a lot of tools out there. I'm not going to take the time to give them all, but they're out there and you can Google them pretty easily.
Okay, I think that's all the questions I have right now. If anyone has any, feel free to add in the chat box.
Let me see, let me look.
I don't know if you've got any.
Yes, I see the ones, and we've answered most of these with the employee improvement plan.
Perfect. Well, Reen, thank you so much. This has been so helpful to me. And I definitely, later, what we'll do when we send this out, I'd love to get your links about the Monday.com and the other website you were talking about. That would be great. And then we're happy to share smart tool planning and IPPs and things like that we're implementing here at the Chamber. So, and at the Highlands Economic Partnership.
So I want to say thank you for having me, but so feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. And again, I just want to say to the Highlands Economic Partnership and Chamber there in Cookeville, great job on making this a topic, because it just is so timely and really important right now. So I'm going to answer one more question that I'm seeing that it doesn't look like I'm answered. It says, do you recommend holding employees to an hour system or a project-orientated system of accountability? Okay, both. As consultants, we bill by the hour. So what you do in an hour is extremely important, but I would give you an answer, Haley, based on if I knew what it was that you guys are doing. Hour is fine for some things. I lean towards more project oriented. I kind of play the role of, I've told you what I want, I hired you, and I know you're great, and I know you're gonna get it done, and I wanna see the project as you're nearing the end. I wanna see it for review. But it really depends on the type of job being performed. Everything for me always goes back to the job function. Okay, Amy, that's the last one that I see.
Okay, great, awesome. And it looks like Haley said she was in marketing and community outreach. I will say that from experience in working in marketing, you were billing by the hours as well. So I guess that would be hourly, but project-based, I think it's great to use those SMART goals and the deadlines that are associated with those milestones. So thank you so much, Reen, again. And I don't know, Caitlin, if she has some comments to add as we close out.
Absolutely. And I was going to see if I could switch from our logo over to my screen. Let me just stop sharing here for a moment. Okay. Well, I guess from this, I will just say thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Reen. We really appreciate you talking to us, and this is has been such valuable information. And it's prompted us to think about some future virtual opportunities for us to discuss further technology use or etiquette when we're on these calls. So keep an eye out for that. YP Highlands and the Highlands Economic Partnership are really excited to offer these opportunities to everyone virtually, and give us feedback. Things that you liked, maybe things that we could do better or differently, let us know, and we'll make sure to share all of these resources with you once Reen shares with us, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Everyone.